On this day in history, we remember the remarkable individuals who shaped our world. Welcome to Who Died Today in History, where we honor their legacies. From artists to leaders, their impact lives on. If you find their stories meaningful, like, subscribe, and hit the bell to stay connected. Marlene Dietrich, the iconic German-American actress and singer, died of natural causes on May 6, 1992, in Paris, at the age of 90. Her death marked the end of an era defined by glamour, resistance, and reinvention. Known for her sultry voice, androgynous style, and commanding presence, Dietrich had long withdrawn from public life, spending her final years in seclusion. Yet, even in death, she remained a powerful symbol of old Hollywood, wartime defiance, and artistic courage. Dietrich's passing came at a time when the 20th century's great cinematic and political legacies were being re-evaluated. Born in Berlin in 1901, she rose to international stardom with films like The Blue Angel and Shanghai Express, becoming a muse of director Joseph von Sternberg and one of the first German actresses to successfully transition to Hollywood. What set her apart was not just her screen presence, but her unflinching moral stance during World War II. She renounced her German citizenship, embraced American identity, and performed tirelessly for Allied troops on the front lines, often in dangerous war zones. Her death in Paris, far from the glitz of Los Angeles or the turbulence of Berlin, seemed poetic. It underscored her cosmopolitan identity and lifelong resistance to simple definitions. Dietrich was a woman of contradictions, a glamorous icon who aged out of the spotlight by choice, a European who became a fervent American patriot, and a sex symbol who challenged gender norms. The immediate response to her death was a surge of retrospectives, tributes, and media coverage that re-examined her cultural significance. Paris mourned her as an adopted daughter. Berlin held a more conflicted remembrance, reflecting on her anti-Nazi stance and complicated relationship with her homeland. Her legend only deepened posthumously. Biographies, documentaries, and museum exhibitions followed, ensuring her legacy would endure not just as a film star, but as a defiant symbol of moral clarity and artistic freedom. Marlene Dietrich's death reminds us that cultural power often outlives political power. Her life was one of performance, but her choices were authentic. In immortalizing her, we see how society clings to figures who challenge norms and embody resilience. Through cinema, photographs, and the haunting echo of her voice in wartime recordings, Dietrich remains eternally poised, both in memory and in myth. Vida Blue, the electrifying left-handed pitcher who dazzled Major League Baseball in the 1970s, died on May 6, 2023, at the age of 73. His death, from medical complications, came decades after his headline-grabbing rise and turbulent fall from baseball's elite. A symbol of both youthful promise and the cost of fame, Blue's passing was a poignant moment for fans of the game, marking the loss of a player who embodied a transformative era in American sports. Blue rocketed to stardom in 1971 when, at just 21 years old, he won both the American League Cy Young Award and the MVP, leading the Oakland Athletics with a blazing fastball and astonishing poise. That year, he became one of the first black pitchers to dominate the mound with such national visibility, a powerful image during a time of continuing racial and social change in America. His stardom reflected the growing integration and commercialization of the sport, as well as the burdens it placed on young black athletes expected to perform flawlessly in the spotlight. His death evoked memories not only of his triumphs on the field, but of the struggles he faced off it. A contract dispute with Oakland owner Charlie Finley, followed by suspensions due to substance abuse issues in the 1980s, curtailed what might have been a Hall of Fame career. Blue's experiences reflected the broader tensions of the era: labor rights in sports, the pressure of celebrity, and the evolving understanding of addiction and mental health. The immediate reaction to his death was one of deep respect tinged with melancholy. Former teammates and fans celebrated his brilliance, while also acknowledging the complexity of his legacy. His story served as both inspiration and caution of what is gained by talent and what is lost to circumstance. Vita Blue's life and death highlight how memory and legacy in sports are rarely about statistics alone. We immortalize athletes not just for their victories, but for how they reflect the cultural tides of their times. In murals, documentaries, and baseball lore, Blue's flame-throwing arm and resilient spirit endure, reminding us of sport's power to uplift, its human cost, and the immortality granted to those who move us, flaws and all. And Todd, the British actress renowned for her poise and ethereal screen presence, passed away from natural causes on May 6, 1993, at the age of 84. Her death marked the quiet close of a career that had once made her one of Britain's most recognizable cinematic figures during and after World War II. In a world increasingly dominated by modern celebrity culture, Todd's graceful exit from the spotlight mirrored a fading era of restrained elegance and emotional subtlety in film. Todd's career blossomed in the 1940s and 1950s, particularly through her collaborations with director David Lean, whom she later married. Films like The Seventh Veil and Madeleine positioned her as a symbol of refined British femininity, composed, intelligent, and quietly tormented. Her portrayals often dealt with emotional repression, personal sacrifice, and moral conflict, themes that resonated with audiences grappling with the aftermath of war and the changing role of women in society. The natural and relatively unpublicized nature of her death stood in stark contrast to the highly dramatized exits of many modern stars. Yet that very silence was reflective of Todd's era, in which discretion and dignity were prized, both in art and in life. Her passing did not cause cultural upheaval, but it did stir nostalgic reverence among film historians and classic cinema enthusiasts who remembered her as a representative of a more introspective age of filmmaking. In the years following her death, Todd's legacy has endured less in popular culture than in academic and cinephile circles. Film retrospectives and biographical works occasionally reintroduce her to new audiences, though she remains a somewhat under-celebrated figure compared to her Hollywood contemporaries. Nevertheless, her performances continue to captivate with their emotional depth and subtlety, offering a quiet but powerful window into mid-20th century British cinema. And Todd's passing reminds us that cultural memory often favors the loudest voices, but there is enduring value in subtlety and restraint. We memorialize figures like her through restored film prints, critical essays, and curated retrospectives that remind us of cinema's power to reflect inner worlds. In doing so, we honor a legacy shaped not by spectacle, but by the quiet strength of a woman who spoke volumes with silence. William J. Casey, the enigmatic director of the Central Intelligence Agency under President Ronald Reagan, died on May 6, 1987, from complications related to brain cancer. His death came at a moment of profound political turbulence as the Iran-Contra scandal was unfolding, a covert operation that had shaken the foundations of public trust in American government. Casey's death, natural though it was, carried the weight of unresolved national questions, casting a shadow over a tumultuous chapter in U.S. intelligence and foreign policy history. Casey, a seasoned intelligence officer and shrewd political operator, had overseen the CIA during one of its most aggressive and controversial periods since the Cold War's peak. Under his direction, the agency supported anti-communist movements worldwide, including the Contras in Nicaragua and the Mujahideen in Afghanistan. His tenure epitomized the Reagan administration's combative stance against Soviet influence, often through covert and morally ambiguous methods. At the time of his death, Casey had just undergone surgery for a brain tumor and was unable to testify fully before Congress about his role in the Iran-Contra affair. His passing, just months before scheduled hearings, fueled speculation and conspiracy theories, particularly since he was believed to hold key knowledge about the authorization and oversight of secret arms deals with Iran and the diversion of funds to Nicaraguan rebels. The timing to many seemed suspicious, and in the vacuum of answers, his death became a cipher for the secrecy and duplicity critics associated with the U.S. intelligence apparatus of the 1980s. Casey's death did not shift the trajectory of global politics dramatically, but it did crystallize the unease many Americans felt about unchecked executive power and clandestine operations. His passing served as a symbol of an era when Cold War paranoia and realpolitik often overrode transparency and democratic accountability. In remembering William J. Casey, we confront the uneasy balance between national security and public trust. His legacy endures not through statues or celebratory biographies, but through the declassified documents, investigative journalism, and dramatic retellings in film and television that continue to question the ethics of power exercised in secrecy. Casey's death reminds us that how leaders are remembered is deeply influenced not just by how they lived, but by what truths they take with them to the grave. Monty Woolly, the impeccably bearded actor and playwright best remembered for his role as the acerbic Sheridan Whiteside in The Man Who Came to Dinner, died on May 6, 1963, at the age of 74 from complications related to kidney and heart ailments. His death marked the close of a career that uniquely bridged the genteel sophistication of early 20th century theater with the glamour and cynicism of Golden Age Hollywood. Woolly's public persona, cultured, witty, and unapologetically irascible, resonated with audiences at a time when America was navigating the uncertainties of war, post-war adjustment, and evolving social norms. His characters, often intellectual and flamboyant, pushed against traditional masculine stereotypes, embracing flamboyance and refinement without ridicule. In this way, his work reflected a broader challenge to the rigidity of societal expectations, especially within the conservatism of mid-century America. His death from natural causes came during a transitional period in American entertainment. By the early 1960s, the studio system that had made Woolly a star was declining, and new voices and styles were taking center stage. As such, his passing received respectful acknowledgement, but was somewhat muted compared to the cultural shifts already underway. Still, for lovers of classic cinema and theater, his loss was deeply felt, an end to a particular brand of eloquent literate comedy that had once defined the sophistication of stage-to-screen adaptations. Monty Woolly's death did not alter the course of history, but it solidified his place as a beloved character actor whose presence added sharpness and depth to every production. Over the years, retrospectives and film enthusiasts have continued to celebrate his performances, particularly his ability to wield sarcasm and warmth simultaneously, traits that made his characters memorable, if not always likable. Woolly's legacy lives on in the performance arts. He is commemorated not through grand memorials, but through the ongoing appreciation of his roles, his distinctive voice, and his unapologetic individuality. His life and death serve as a reminder that charisma and intellect, even when delivered with a sneer, can leave an indelible mark. Through film, theater archives, and the quiet admiration of cinephiles, Monty Woolly remains part of our cultural conversation, proof that style, wit, and integrity can outlast time. Helen Vigel, a formidable figure in 20th century European theater, died of natural causes on May 6, 1971, in East Berlin. As the widow of playwright Bertolt Brecht and the artistic director of the Berliner Ensemble, Vigel's death marked the end of a vital era in politically charged performance art. Her passing, though not sudden or violent, echoed deeply in the world of theater, particularly in post-war Germany, where she had become a symbol of cultural resilience and ideological conviction. Vigel lived through the Weimar Republic, the rise of Nazism, exile during World War II, and the eventual re-establishment of a socialist East German state. She was more than a muse, she was a creative and political force in her own right. Her death in the heart of the Cold War, at a time when East Germany's cultural institutions were carefully curated for ideological purposes, underscored the challenge of maintaining artistic integrity in a politically divided nation. Her commitment to the theater as a vehicle for social critique reflected the values of her era, when art was expected to serve both political enlightenment and cultural refinement. The immediate consequence of her passing was a palpable void in the Berliner ensemble. Vigel had maintained the vision of Brechtian theater, ensuring its continuation long after her husband's death in 1956. Her stewardship had preserved a style that emphasized alienation, critical thinking, and socio-political commentary. Without her steady leadership, the ensemble faced uncertainty, and the ideological fervor that once fueled its productions gradually softened with time. Yet her death did more than mark an end. It helped cement her legend. Vigel is immortalized in black and white footage as the definitive Mother Courage, a role she originated in Brecht's anti-war masterpiece, Mother Courage and Her Children. Her fierce performances, marked by stoicism and emotional restraint, live on in theater studies and retrospectives, preserving a powerful model of politically engaged acting. Helen Vigel's death reveals a profound truth about how societies remember figures who combine artistry with activism. In life, she bridged ideology and art. In death, she became a symbol of perseverance and integrity. We continue to honor her through academic study, archival recordings, and the enduring legacy of the Berliner Ensemble, proving that memory and influence often outlast even the most turbulent political eras. King Edward VII died of natural causes on May 6, 1910 at Buckingham Palace, following a series of heart attacks. His passing marked the end of the Edwardian era, a brief but pivotal period characterized by imperial confidence, social elegance, and the undercurrents of modernity that foreshadowed the seismic shifts of the 20th century. His death, while expected due to declining health, carried profound symbolic weight across Britain and its vast empire, as it closed a chapter of relative peace before the outbreak of World War I. Edward VII had ascended to the throne in 1901 after the death of his mother, Queen Victoria, whose 63-year reign had defined an era. In contrast to her stern demeanor, Edward was known for his affable personality, love of diplomacy, and lifestyle that earned him the nickname, the Peacemaker. His reign, though only 9 years long, helped modernize the British monarchy, making it more publicly engaging and socially adaptable. His efforts in fostering European alliances, particularly with France through the Entente Cordiale, showed a monarch in tune with the shifting geopolitical currents. His death came at a time when Europe was delicately balanced between nationalism and diplomacy. Though Edward's passing did not directly cause global conflict, the vacuum left in his wake was significant. His son and successor, George V, inherited a world that would soon spiral into war. Edward's more personal diplomacy, often driven by personal rapport, was gone, and a younger, less experienced generation of leaders would soon mismanage tensions that Edward had helped to ease. The public reaction to his death was one of profound mourning. Massive crowds lined the streets during his funeral procession, which was attended by kings, emperors, and dignitaries from across the globe, the last great gathering of European royalty before the continent descended into war. Edward VII's death reveals how mortality intersects with the perception of stability and continuity in leadership. His passing amplified his legend as a modernizing monarch who bridged the rigidity of Victorianism and the complexity of the 20th century. Today, he is immortalized in portraits, biographies, and even the period that bears his name, Edwardian, a shorthand for a fleeting era of grace before the storms of modern history. His legacy endures not just through commemoration, but through the lens of a world that soon lost its innocence. Alexander von Humboldt, the renowned Prussian naturalist, explorer, and polymath, died of natural causes on May 6, 1859, in Berlin at the age of 89. His death marked the end of a life dedicated to scientific inquiry, environmental awareness, and intellectual curiosity. Living through the Enlightenment and into the Industrial Age, Humboldt embodied the values of rational thought, empirical observation, and global interconnectedness, principles that were being tested by the rising tides of nationalism and industrial expansion. Humboldt's final years were spent in scholarly reflection, corresponding with scientists across Europe, and continuing to publish his magnum opus, Cosmos, which attempted to unify diverse scientific disciplines into a coherent picture of the universe. His natural death, devoid of drama, nonetheless carried symbolic significance. It was not the end of just a man, but of a scientific era in which the pursuit of knowledge was closely linked to idealism and the belief in progress through understanding. The immediate response to his death was one of international mourning. Tributes poured in from around the world, especially from Latin America, where Humboldt had conducted extensive research decades earlier. Leaders and intellectuals from countries like Venezuela, Colombia, and Mexico honored him not only as a scientist, but as a visionary who respected indigenous cultures and challenged colonial exploitation. His work had inspired generations of scientists, including Charles Darwin, who credited Humboldt as a key influence on his own thinking. Though his death did not cause political upheaval, it did signify a transition in scientific thinking. The 19th century was becoming more specialized, less romantic, and increasingly driven by industrial and economic interests. Humboldt's holistic approach to nature, one that connected climate, geography, biology, and human culture, was being eclipsed by narrower scientific fields. Still, his legacy endured and even gained renewed relevance in the modern era with the rise of environmental awareness and climate science. Humboldt's death reminds us that mortality does not diminish intellectual power, it often enshrines it. His memory has been preserved in the countless geographical features bearing his name, in statues, in the continuing publication of his writings, and in modern environmental movements that echo his integrated view of the natural world. In immortalizing Humboldt, humanity honors the enduring pursuit of knowledge and the belief that understanding nature is key to understanding ourselves.